What you are about to hear may change the way you view parenting forever. This is the shocking story of a 17-year-old girl, Jayden Parkinson, who was brutally murdered and buried by her own boyfriend. I believe watching this video could save a child's life. Jayden Parkinson was a girl full of life, joy, and a mischievous spirit that complemented her natural charm. She shared a special bond with her mother, filled with love and trust. Her openness and friendliness helped her make many friends at school. Everyone who knew Jayden admired her sensitivity, cheerful disposition, and kind heart. She did well in her studies and dreamed of becoming a hairdresser, a goal that inspired her to keep moving forward. However, Jayden's life took a dramatic turn when she was just 7 years old. Her parents decided to divorce, and the court unexpectedly awarded custody of Jayden, her brother, and her sisters to their father. He moved with the children to Oxford, in the United Kingdom. This move was a shock to the Parkinson family, especially for the children, who were accustomed to a loving atmosphere created by both parents. They missed the fun holidays and the pleasant surprises that their mom and dad would arrange for them. It was unclear how the father managed to gain custody of the children, a decision that was a severe blow to both the children and their mother. Jayden was especially affected as she had an exceptionally close relationship with her mom. Family friends claimed there were no obvious conflicts or negativity between the couple, but despite her efforts, the mother could not keep her children. As Jayden entered her teenage years, new challenges arose. Her boundless energy and rebellious spirit made it hard for her father to manage her upbringing. Although Jayden remained kind, charming, and had a wonderful sense of humor, she faced typical teenage problems, especially after moving to high school. Relations with her father became increasingly strained, despite his sincere attempts to care for the children and provide for them. He was stricter and more demanding than their mother. At this age, Jayden perceived her father's care as a restriction on her freedom and a sign of excessive control. The situation was further complicated by the lack of regular communication with her mother, whom she missed terribly. This led to constant conflicts and misunderstandings. Seeking understanding and support, Jayden began to run away from home. Unlike many teens in similar situations, she did not wander the streets or fall into bad company. Instead, she would go straight to her mother, seeking comfort in her home. Even while with her mother, Jayden would still communicate with her father and answer his calls, but at the first opportunity, she would try to return to her mother, where she felt truly loved and understood. Despite all the trials, the special bond between mother and daughter remained strong. It seemed the difficulties of adolescence only strengthened their relationship. During one of her visits to her mother, 14-year-old Jayden met a boy named Ben Blakeley, and through him, his older brother Ben, who was 20 at the time. Despite the significant age difference, a mutual attraction developed between Jayden and Ben, and they decided to try a relationship. This decision caused mixed reactions. Some believed that such a choice indicated Ben's emotional immaturity. However, Jayden was very attracted to the idea of dating an older guy. Due to her age, she was still naive and could not always control her emotions and feelings. Despite warnings, a romantic relationship full of hopes and dreams for a happy future began between them. Jayden dreamed of a happy future, not realizing that her fate was already in the hands of a dangerous person. From the moment Ben became Jayden's boyfriend, he began integrating himself into her life, making friends with her classmates despite their age difference. He managed to connect with the school kids and even became a leader to some extent. At the same time, Ben began to surround Jayden with excessive attention and care, making her fall head over heels in love with him. He painted vivid pictures of their bright future together, building castles in the air. The naive young Jayden believed that with him, she could achieve the happiness her parents had failed to provide. But the romantic period did not last long. Soon, Ben's behavior became possessive and manipulative. Insults and humiliation began just a month after they started dating. He treated Jayden rudely, and being in her first relationship, she looked for the reasons for his change in herself, thinking it was her fault. Ben exploited her insecurities, noticing that Jayden was succumbing to his influence. Her naivety allowed him to criticize any little thing she did or said. He played emotional games, one moment complimenting her beauty, the next accusing her of terrible things. He often used jealousy as a reason for accusations, coming up with reasons to accuse her of betrayal and deception. During this time, Jayden discovered that Ben was using illegal substances, which partly explained his emotional instability and mood swings. However, it was clear that verbal abuse would not be the end of it. As Jayden became more attached to the toxic relationship, Ben's behavior became truly aggressive and cruel. Once, when they were with a group of her friends, he openly expressed his dissatisfaction with them, a typical tactic of a manipulator trying to isolate his victim. He wanted to cut her off from her friends, and sadly, Jayden did not realize what was happening. She began to feel guilty for every accusation or reproach from Ben, believing her behavior was the cause of all the misunderstandings and conflicts. Jayden eventually stood up to Ben, defending her right to maintain friendships, which enraged him. He used various manipulative techniques to make her quarrel with her friends. Jayden tried her best to maintain her friendships, but gradually, everyone began to distance themselves from her due to Ben's toxic behavior. Despite everything, her feelings for Ben did not fade, even as his behavior became more outrageous. Once, he even hit her in the face. Although it was clear that such behavior was unjustifiable, Ben managed to convince Jayden that she was at fault and deserved it. Jayden's family saw that she was in a toxic relationship with a dangerous person. Her mother and father were worried and tried to reach out to her, but Jayden was caught between her family and her love for Ben. Her infatuation clouded her judgment, and again she chose Ben. His behavior became increasingly erratic and unpredictable. After one quarrel, Ben caught a neighbor's cat and brutally killed it by cutting off its head. He threw the animal's head into Jayden's bed as an act of revenge. Jayden was horrified, but even after that, Ben managed to confuse her, making her doubt the reality of what had happened. He played the role of a lover, but behind his charming smile was the soul of a true sadist. He did not stop at threats to harm her pets. He went further, saying he could just as easily kill Jayden and her entire family. Due to her limited life experience, Jayden could not see the signs of a serious mental disorder in his behavior. Ben continued to manipulate her, and she felt trapped, unable to find a way out without catastrophic consequences. Ben was already on the radar of law enforcement. His life was full of petty crimes, and he often found himself at the police station. Raised in a foster family with an alcoholic foster father who was abusive, Ben grew up in an atmosphere of constant fear and humiliation. His relatives quickly realized he was a danger to those around him. Once, when his mother confronted him about his behavior, Ben threatened her with a screwdriver in a fit of rage. Despite being terrified, she did not report him to the police, hoping to help him on her own. This led to Ben being sent to a psychiatric clinic where he shocked a doctor by discussing how to commit the perfect murder and dispose of a body without getting caught. He was only 13 at the time. When Jayden's parents learned about these alarming facts, they decided to end her relationship with Ben, who was already known for his violent behavior. At that time, Ben was openly mocking Jayden, who was visibly in a state of emotional distress. She often cried when alone, feeling helpless and cornered. She saw no way out of the relationship and wished Ben would disappear from her life forever. Meanwhile, Ben tried to isolate Jayden even from her own family, seeking to control every aspect of her life. When verbal manipulation didn't work, he he resorted to physical violence. Under Ben's influence, Jayden began stealing things from her home to sell and give him the money. He forced her to commit crimes, using threats and manipulation. Her family eventually noticed the missing items and confronted her, leading to a serious conflict. Relations with her loved ones deteriorated, but Jayden was too afraid of Ben's anger to reveal the truth. Eventually, she ran away from her father's house, moving in with Ben, who was living with his cousin at the time. After a few weeks, the cousin moved out, leaving Jayden alone with Ben. During this period, Ben's cruelty escalated. He began beating Jayden daily, locking her in the bathroom for hours after each beating. The 16-year-old girl was in a hopeless situation, not daring to return home because her relatives had caught her stealing. Ben threatened to destroy her entire family if she left him. He controlled every aspect of her life, even punishing her for looking at other people. Despite his constant infidelity, Jayden remained in the toxic relationship, living in fear of his threats. Meanwhile, Ben's control over Jayden only intensified. He locked her in a room when he went out, only releasing her upon his return. She needed his permission for every action, no matter how small. Under such conditions, Jayden could not focus on her studies, and her life was falling apart. She was trapped in a cycle of violence, unable to see a way out. Jayden's mother, realizing the seriousness of the situation, decided to take her daughter in at all costs. She tried to persuade Jayden to break all ties with Ben, but Jayden, always rebellious, returned to him after just a few days. She was so emotionally dependent on Ben that she could not leave him, even though she desperately wanted to. In November 2013, Jayden made a desperate attempt to end the relationship for good. Afraid for her loved one's safety, she did not return home, but instead sought refuge in a homeless shelter. She believed the staff could protect her, and most importantly, that Ben wouldn't find her there. Unfortunately, Ben tracked her down and continued to control her, even forbidding her from using the toilet. Over time, the shelter staff helped Jayden realize the extent of Ben's abuse and manipulation. She began to see that she was not obligated to obey him. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope for a better future. But Ben noticed that Jayden was slipping from his control. This fueled his anger and thirst for revenge. When he discovered that Jayden had a new boyfriend, he sent threats trying to scare him away. He then publicly posted intimate photos and videos of Jayden online without her consent, hoping to push her to despair or even suicide. At that time, there were no laws against such actions, leaving Jayden without legal recourse. Despite all the bullying, Jayden did not succumb to despair. However, a few weeks after breaking up with Ben, she discovered she was pregnant. She hoped that having a child together would soften Ben's heart and restore their relationship. On December 3, 2013, she called Ben to tell him about the pregnancy. She had to use someone else's phone because Ben had taken hers and never returned it. When Ben heard the news, he refused to believe her, accusing her of trying to trap him with another man's child. This conversation led to an agreement to meet and discuss everything in person. On the day of the meeting, Jayden met with her mother, telling her about her pregnancy and assuring her that she felt free and happy because Ben had supposedly left her alone. Her mother was relieved, thinking Jayden had finally broken free from the toxic relationship. They talked about the future and even planned a shopping trip to buy things for the unborn child. However, Jayden never told her mother about the planned meeting with Ben, fearing his reaction and not wanting to endanger her mother. At around 3:30 p.m., Jayden went to meet Ben. She was last seen alive at Didcot Station, captured on CCTV cameras. Ben led her to an old abandoned barn under the guise of having a peaceful picnic where they could talk. But once inside, Ben's behavior changed drastically. Filled with rage, he accused Jayden of betrayal, claiming her pregnancy was the result of infidelity. His anger escalated, and he attacked her, knocking her to the ground and strangling her until she showed no signs of life. To ensure she was dead, Ben checked her breathing with his phone screen. Satisfied, he calmly set about disposing of her body. Realizing he did not have the tools to bury Jayden, Ben returned home to retrieve them. CCTV footage showed him boarding a train alone after the murder. A few days later, he returned to the crime scene with his younger brother Jake, forcing him to dig a grave near the barn. Jake, fearful of his brother, obeyed. After burying Jayden, Ben dug up her body a few days later, placing it in an old suitcase. He then took a taxi to a church cemetery where he buried her in a grave he had prepared earlier. Meanwhile, Jayden's family was frantic, unable to reach her. On December 4th, 2013, they reported her disappearance to the police. An investigation began, and it quickly pointed to Ben. Despite his initial denials, evidence, including CCTV footage, contradicted his story. His behavior during interrogations was erratic and aggressive, raising more suspicions. The investigation took a turn when a taxi driver came forward, recalling how he had driven Ben and his suitcase to the cemetery. This, along with other evidence, led the police to search the area, where they found Jayden's body. Ben was arrested and charged with premeditated murder and desecrating a body. During the trial, Ben showed no remorse, often laughing or making inappropriate comments. The jury found him guilty of premeditated murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Jayden's family hoped he would never be released, recognizing him as a dangerous individual. This tragic story leaves a mark on all who hear it. It serves as a stark reminder of the importance of recognizing the signs of abuse and manipulation. We must learn from this to protect our loved ones and prevent such tragedies in the future.